Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to our All-Ireland Final Review podcast. Myself and Rory are going to represent the Cork corner, and we've got two tip lads.
The Limerick gang will love this.
Brendan Cummins and Shane McGrath are with us as well. And look, Brendan, let's just talk about the day first of all, and just like what a brilliant final it was. What an unbelievable advertisement for this game that we all love. But it was just one of those brilliant finals that's going to live with us for a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, it was, I suppose, for 55 minutes or so. It was pulsating, but there was that little air of inevitability when Limerick, after Paddy Deegan shot through the net, when they saw they were threatened and they went up the gears. It was a joy to watch the way they played the game. But as a spectacle as a whole, it was a fantastic day. I would have to say the only downside is that no game on before us. Obviously the teams coming out, the Offaly team coming out with very few in the crowd and all. It just seemed we were standing up looking at it about an hour and a half before the off. We were inside in the stadium, and it just looked very cold. There was a band playing there at one stage for maybe 10 or 15 minutes to pass the time. Then there was a gap, and it just everyone looking at each other. So it's something that would be great to have some kind of a game on before it, just to get people in. I know the minor, there's been an issue around how young they are and all. I don't know what the fix is, but certainly going straight into the senior game left a bit cold in the run up to it. But the game itself was very, very, very good. And in fairness to Kilkenny, they were lucky in a lot of ways. They started playing with the wind, which gave them the chance to get the ball inside to Cody. And when TJ went in, he caught a few balls. Like, Murphy was able to put one ball down inside to the edge of the D with the wind, and TJ had a spectacular catch. So it certainly gave Kilkenny that bit of momentum that they needed. But those 5 or 6 minutes before half time, it was wrestled away from them, and from there on, it did have that procession feel to it.
Yeah. And look, I suppose that air of inevitability that Brendan talks about, Shane, I think it's just because we know how good this team are. And I think on the biggest day of them all, they showed us their mettle. And I think that's probably the measure of a great team.
Unreal, and I suppose when you're playing any match, I suppose when a team scores a goal against you, it can be a sucker punch. But in an All-Ireland final, when a team is scoring a goal against you, and it might be against the run of play, e.g. Paddy Deegan's goal, the response, lads, is unbelievable. I just have it down here that after Kilkenny got the goal, next 5 scores Limerick, Kilkenny get a point. Next 5 scores Limerick, Kilkenny get 2 points. Next 6 scores Limerick. I mean, you've well discussed all the stats and the scores and what they did, but I just think I don't know what much more you can say about them, Jacqui. Really, if it's not happening for one, it'll happen for someone else. They're never dependent on one guy. They're for me, Rory, I suppose we discussed it earlier on in pods as well. I think this is their best All-Ireland, because of who they were missing. The Munster Championship campaign, they came through barely getting over the line. For the first time in a long time, we were nearly writing them off. I thought the day in the Gaelic grounds against Cork was going to be the day that was going to be it for them. I thought Cork were going to do it. And after that, I said, no way, I can't ever doubt this group again. And I didn't doubt him yesterday. Going in at half time, and I suppose you had to be there really, lads, to realise the significance of the breeze. It was a serious breeze. I suppose no more indicated than by Owen Murphy's score. Very hard for goalies to score points in the All-Ireland finals. Isn't that right, Brendan? Got one yourself there. I think it was into the hill you got your one, though, wasn't it? Yeah.
I'm starting to like Tipperary people on this podcast. Come on every week, Shane.
So just let people know, Cummins got an absolute worldie of a one in 2010 as well, lads. But it was into the hill, so that breeze is swirling around Croke Park. But look, I just they're just unbelievable. As I said, there's no dependence on one guy. They mentioned the word process several times. They obviously have it. They obviously trust each other. There's no panic. And even yesterday, 55 minutes gone, Jacqui, and I see Tom Morrissey coming off. We're up going, what is Tom Morrissey coming off for? And you're going, Carl Neal is coming on. Right. First ball, he missed it. Carl Neal then scores 2 points in play, wins puckouts. I don't know. They're just unreal. And as I said, I say it again. I think this is their best All-Ireland with who they were missing, what they did come through the Munster campaign. Leinster people might like me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I feel that, still that 3 or 4 of the best teams in the country are still maybe in Munster, because when you see what Limerick did to the two Leinster teams in the semi-final and the final, and I look, Kilkenny are there in merit, but I still feel that look what Limerick had to come through Munster, +2 after 5 games, Jacqui, Munster champions. They demolished Limerick in the demolished Galway in the semi-final, and they more or less did the same yesterday in the All-Ireland final. So look, awesome team, 4 in a row. But you know what, Jacqui, and I don't know what I mentioned last night, there's one team in Ireland that are really good at stopping 5 in a rows, and it's Tipperary. And I said I had a bit of crack with a few Limerick people last night that that Tip are good at stopping 5 in a rows. And I tell you what, if they could do it next year, it'd be magic, Brendan, wouldn't it?
It would be great. But just if I was in the Leinster camp there, I just thought about that, about the Munster and Leinster and the comparison between the two. Consistently, Clare have been the best team in the Munster Championship based on the tables, and they can't beat Kilkenny. And they've had 2 goes at it. They've tried 3 different ways of doing it, and they still haven't been able to do it. I think the argument on that is more so around that Galway and Kilkenny would be okay inside in the Munster Championship. But obviously then you look at the other teams in Leinster, like the anthems and say Westmeath's going up and down, Carlow will have a go at it next year, all that kind of thing. Dublin and Wexford have had particularly poor years this year. I think Dublin and Wexford will be a lot better next year, based on how thick they'll be after where this year went, you know. So that should give an extra bit of fizz to the Leinster Championship next year, I would expect.
That or Limerick are just a sensational team, Rory, you know?
Yeah. They are just sensational. I mean, it was a riveting contest, as the lads mentioned, for 50 minutes. And I'll come back to the Munster thing. Actually, deal with it now. I do agree with Shane. I think where I would go with it is their biggest tests this year came in Munster. I mean, they only beat Waterford by 4 points, having had a man sent off very early in the second half. They went out and drew with Tipperary, lost to Clare, and then got over the line by a single point to Cork. Now, the gaps then for a team that's as long on the road as they are, I thought was set up perfectly for them. 3 to 4 weeks into a semi-final, 3 weeks into a final, or 2 weeks into a final. It was almost ideal. And I know, look, it's Monday morning quarterback stuff to say I couldn't really see them being stopped. I did expect Kilkenny to come with a ferocious challenge, and everything you associate with Kilkenny was there. Touch, hooks, blocks, the most exquisite use of the Hurley in the most intense and pressured circumstances. They scored the goal they needed early on. Ridiculous work rate. Got the start they wanted. Fantastic goal. What a player Owen Cody is, by the way. The second half, I just thought the very beginning of the second half was odd from Limerick. They looked just a little static, just at for the first 3 or 4 minutes of the second half. A little bit laborious. And even the goal that Paddy Deegan got, I think, was a bit bizarre in that, like, there was so many players free. Now, leave aside the net bursting and all of that. And then the goal goes in, you're saying, geez, they could fold here. And what did they do? Unbelievable response. I mean, the gap went from 5 down to 1 in the space of about 90 seconds, I'd say. You know, it was just incredible. No sense of panic, no sense of losing the plot, just all the hallmarks of champions. You'd wonder, actually, why Scruff didn't have a problem with the old contact lenses in the same way that some of the other goalkeepers do at a certain stage, just to maybe stifle the momentum that Limerick had. But look, Limerick very nearly always piled on in that third quarter, so it was going to test Kilkenny. They went into the lead, I don't think, for the first time until the 50th minute. Classic Limerick, like 9 points in the first half, and they had 9 points on the board with 20 minutes to go of the second. Like, that is just some turnaround. And there was elements, and again, look, the lads would be good. There was the way they responded reminded me an awful lot of the second half display against Tip in the Munster final of 2021. But it was even better. Like, it was just the most awesome display of hurling in 35 minutes I've ever seen. Now, I was only watching on TV, and it was just, look, as Shane said, there's nothing more you can say about them. They're just an incredible side. The drive for 5 begins already. All the teams now go back to square one. It'll be a long searching winter for Kilkenny, because obviously some of their big players now are another year on. Losing 4 All-Ireland finals for the first time in their history in succession, that's going to definitely, that'll definitely stick and hurt to a degree. And just one mention as well, Jacqui, I do think John Keenan, and I know Don Logue mentioned it last night, gave an outstanding display of refereeing, in fairness to the man. And look, it's a real shame now that if he's been forced into retirement. But look, all in all, just a marvellous day, and just a shame it's all over.
Yeah, big shame, because it was a great season too. Just to pick up on a few of those things, Brendan, I do wonder for Kilkenny, what more could they have done? Is it just that Limerick put the foot on the gas and nobody could have caught them? Or is there anything more that they could have done to stop what happened in that second half? It was an outstanding display, 21 points. We may never see the likes again, but was there anything else that you've seen that you've said, geez, if they could have just got that right?
There's a few little things they could do, but I think the interview Derek Lynn gave afterwards is very similar to Henry Shepton's interview. They're just broke. They're looking at it going, well, if there was a glaring thing like I could have done, like I could have put in a sweeper, it might have fixed it. No. If I could have done this different, no, that wouldn't have fixed it either. So they're sitting at home watching the video this morning or tomorrow, and they're going, what else could we have done? Yeah, we could have went shorter on the puck outs. Yeah, 100%. We could have worked the ball a little bit better. But as we saw in the first 20 minutes of the game, while Limerick had only scored 5 points, they were still trying to work the ball. They were still taking on contact all the time. And every time you smack into a Limerick fella, it takes about 30 or 40 seconds out of your game. So they just kept running it and running it and running it. And eventually you can't stop tracking the runners. And for that 5 minutes before half time, that's what happened. Kilkenny just couldn't keep their foot on them because Limerick are just so powerful and so strong. And then you look at the second half and you say, right, Owen Murphy, there was times when they had 4 in the full back line, like what Limerick do, flick the ball out to Paddy Deegan, was out under the hug and stand, he'll play it inside. But they have no Cian Lynch figure who stands on the in the middle of the field and catch the ball in a forest of fellas, holds on to, takes it up the belts, drops it, picks it up again and brings lads into the game. They have no Garrod Hegarty, they have no Tom Morrissey. And those 3 against the wind were absolutely outstanding, I thought. And not scoring because they showed, they got the ball, they held on to it, they took belts. But in the second half, when they were broken down at that stage, Kilkenny, they couldn't keep hitting anymore. That's when they made hay, and then they started to dip by 1,000 cuts, like I said last night, 30 points. So that's, I think, the big problem for both Henry and for Derek Ling and for every other manager. Like, they're looking at this going, Jesus, I'm not too sure what else we could have done outside of Munster. And I think the game is played different in Munster than it is in Croke Park. I think Clare have suffered that the game in Croke Park is played slightly different to what it is. Munster's blood and tongue, they all kill each other. But the stick work and the athleticism that Limerick have will kill every team in Croke Park, or when they get them in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, as we've seen in previous games. It's a racetrack down there as well.
If that's the case, though, Shane, then 5 in a row seems absolutely possible for this team.
Sure, of course it does. Yeah, exactly. And it's just, I don't know what trying to come up with a way to stop them. As Brendan has said, lads have said, like, what more can you do? Like, I mean, Kilkenny, the intensity, like the hits that were going in, like I just have it down here. Like, I mean, the hit after 3 minutes that Adrian Mullen had on Barry Nash there in the corner, or that even Tom Phelan had chasing down Kyle Hayes. Like, they did everything right. Like, intensity, they brought it, like, they were curtailing them. You just have it down here as well. Like, the first good ball Aaron Gillane got in was after 19 minutes, like, so the first kind of diagonal ball that we've seen. So they were shutting them down. But for teams, Jacqui, it's just being able to sustain that.
Yeah.
Like, you were talking about Tip in the most final of 2021 there. Yeah, we did it for a half, but it's just, it's very few teams are able to keep going with them. And to be fair to Kilkenny last year in the All-Ireland final, they did stayed with them all the time. But this year, Limerick are just, as I said, they're so experienced. I agree totally with Brendan about the Croke Park thing, lads. I just, people are saying that, the likes of Ennis and these places, that dimension-wise, they're the same as Croke Park and stuff. They might be, like, but
they don't play the same. They don't play the same.
Lads, it's a different game in Croke Park. The way the pitch even is, like, Brendan, you might agree, like, it just kind of falls off towards the sidelines. If the pitch plays differently, obviously the stands, the stadium, you can't prepare yourself for 82,000 people in a stadium. Like, I mean, even yesterday, and his experiences, Limerick are there, John Kiley roaring at William Donoghue, who's only 10-15 yards away down from, roaring and trying to get into a message, and he keeps going, and eventually he gets it. And I loved William Donoghue's reaction. Like, it was just like, he just kind of went, "It's okay, calm down."
Yeah.
I have it. And I don't know that many people see that, but it's just, I love that reaction from a player. He said, you need it. And he just went, "It's all right, I've got this." And that seems to be the way to be, like, that there's just no panic on the sideline. Yeah, is 5 in a row possible? Of course it is possible. What do you do to stop them? I don't know. You discussed it last night. You try and come up with a new way of hurling. What do you do? Play 5 in the full forward line? I don't know. Do something different. Pay 2 goalkeepers.
Waterford have already tried that, in fairness.
I don't know what you do, like, and I suppose today is the day to discuss it, but I'm sure every other manager around the place will try and be coming up with ways, but they're the standard, they're the bar. I'm sure when Kilkenny were going for 5 in a row, a lot of us thought, I don't know what we're going to do, but I suppose the difference was that maybe we ran them close in 2009, and there was that bit of hope, and I suppose we really did believe we were going to do it, but I don't know, do Kilkenny maybe today, after what happened in the second half in particular, Jacqui, really believe that? I'm sure they have the hurlers and everything, but as you said, guys, there's one guy from Ballyhale, Shamrocks, and we're not retiring him at all. Like, if he wanted to come back next year, I'm sure he'd be welcome. But if he does step away, it's some vibe.
It's a big gap.
Yeah. If you were in his shoes though, Shane, right? Like, I understand TJ Reid has already won everything there is in the game, but I know at some point he has to say, okay, I've had enough. But like, given his performances, maybe not in the final, but his performances this year showed he's still able to do it. We had the same conversation around Conor McManus with the football. If his body is able, his mind is able, it seems he lives and breathes hurling. If you were Derek Ling, in the next couple of weeks, surely you'd be having a chat saying, look, could you just don't make any rash decisions. Just think about it. We're so close.
Yeah, I don't think he will. I think he'll be back with the club now, and we know Ballyhale will always be thereabouts in contention, and their year is long anyway. So I don't think any call will be made until maybe even Ballyhale are finished, whenever that might be. Jacqui could potentially be an All-Ireland club final again. So if he feels good and if he's up to it, I suppose the only difference maybe from this time last year is he's a daddy now as well, and life takes different perspectives. Like when the smallies arrive on the scene as well, and like if I was TJ Reid personally. With when you're doing up my list of achievements and you run out of room on the page with all the achievements, I'd probably be happy enough now to be walking away. But that's me. If he's feeling good and the body and he's avoids injury, I think he'll want to go back. But I don't think any conversation will be had until Ballyhale are finished, Jacqui, in my own personal opinion. And lads, this is from a fella who wanted. You probably know well aware of the story, like that he wanted to walk away from Kilkenny in 2012 because he just had enough of it, like. And like look what he's become since. And I suppose that's the human side of it too, that when things are going well, Jacqui, we'll all go back. And you know what? He's after losing 4 All-Irelands now. If he does go back, it's a big call for him to make. But look, that'll be his call at the end of the day. Like,
I think it's probably important as well that I know myself when I was thinking of packing it in. The important thing is when you meet somebody in the street and they say to you, geez, there was another year in you. That's the conversation you want to have, rather than the conversation of, geez, you hang on a year.
Should have went.
We didn't get rid of you fast enough.
You always have to leave with him wanting more. And
Yeah.
I think, that's the way I always look at these things, and it'll be up to TJ to decide what he's going to do. But if I was asked to give advice, that's the conversation that I'd always say. I meet people on the street, and that's the one to think of.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Can we have the conversation about the greatest team of all time then, Rory? Because I think personally, anytime this comes up, anytime I'm chatting to any of the Kilkenny lads, and even I was having a drink with Jacqui Tyrrell last night afterwards, and I was kind of saying, does it bother you that people are now saying they're the greatest of all time? Because when I think about the Kilkenny team, it's not just that they did 4 in a row. Like, let's not forget, they won 4 more after the 4 in a row. They lost 5 finals. Like, they were there for a decade. It wasn't just the 4 in a row. So I understand the comparisons, and I think Shane is absolutely right. The era that Limerick are winning in now is spectacular, but I still think like there's a lot of road in this debate, because that Kilkenny team were great for more than 4 years.
Wouldn't it be great if you could have a PlayStation game whereby you could actually pair the two of them off against each other and just see what would pan out?
Jacqui Tyrrell still thinks the Kilkenny team would beat them. No bother, lads, by the way.
Look, I think it would be really tight and very, very close. It's a difficult. I think from a Limerick perspective, I think the first thing to say, to me, they're the best team I've ever seen. Right. And I never thought I'd ever say that again after watching the Kilkenny team. I think there's a few things with Limerick that I think are worth maybe putting in as certain caveats, in that it's never harder to win the All-Ireland. I think one of the All-Irelands Kilkenny won, for instance, and this isn't to take away from it in any way, but I think it was Wexford, Offaly, followed by Wexford again, followed by Waterford in the final. Now, if you look at the roads that Limerick have had to travel on their 4 in a row journey, and by the way, a non-awarding of a 65 means they could be going for 6. You know, like this, that
No,
could have been.
No. Tip one that 19.
Yeah. You know, so like you like this is the era that they're in, and I think whether or not they're the greatest, I think will probably be further cemented as time goes on, because I wouldn't say they're finished. And I think just if you were to tell a Limerick person in advance of the 2018 final, when they went up to play Galway, and it was very much seen as a 50-50 game, and it was a 50-50 game. I think, did Joe Canning have a free at the end to level the game? It was that close. It was a 1-point win. Now, if you were to tell a Limerick person then that you were going to go on to win five of the following 6 and to complete a 4 in a row, sure, they would have laughed you out of town. It is extraordinary times for them. They have an incredible management. That was really interesting yesterday, actually, after the two boys picked up the yellows in the half back line, how immediately they made a couple of quick shifts in terms of just dropping William O'Donoghue that little bit deeper. He kind of sat a little bit further back, maybe away from the contact zone, but again, like just thinking on their feet, you know, to try and make sure that he doesn't run the risk of picking up the second one. You know, like I think they have a manager there who you would just, I'd say, like lads would probably run through a brick wall for. He just drips in charisma and personality, honesty. There's just a real genuine personality there that it just, you know, it flows out of them. They're all brilliant characters. There was maybe a criticism that I particularly had of Kilkenny when they were in their pomp, and that they were slightly hidden away. I mean, you wouldn't know what Noel Hickey would look like if he walked past you on the street. Whereas I do think this Limerick team are slightly more accessible, and I think that's important for the game. I think that's really important for hurling as a whole, which would be something that I'd always try and take a slightly more rounded view on. You know, look, there's just so many different aspects to what they've done so far, are so admirable in so many different ways. And all you can say is just off your cap to them. I think the argument about whether they're the greatest is a bit like one person's meat is another person's poison. And sure, look, doctors differ.
To be honest, that's what makes it so much crack.
Yeah,
that's
you
why,
know,
that's why the debate is there.
But for me, anyway, I would say, I think they're the best team I've ever seen.
What do you reckon, Shane?
What I like about them is, I suppose, as I said, like where I'm living, like it's right on the border there. The next town over is Newport, and just the way Newport is now, you know, it's a lot of Limerick people, so there could be more Limerick flags and Tip flags maybe even flying out around there. And I just think that what they're like off the pitch, lads, is maybe not what a lot of people mightn't realise, is that they're so close off the pitch as well. I've said this several times, that if you see one of them out having a coffee or out for a walk or whatever they're doing away from it all, there's 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. They're very, very close off the field as well. They as Cian Lynch said in his lovely speech he made yesterday, really hit all the buttons, you know, kept it nice and simple. But they are a family, like, you know, and I just think it's a perfect storm, lads. I think it's, yeah, they've serious backing, all right, in JP and what he's doing from the Sporting Limerick. They've a really good setup with their county board. You know, they've a really good manager. They've a brilliant coach. It's been the same all the time. If you look at other teams, maybe if they had success, 1 or 2 things changed, but it's constantly the same. It's the same, but
they're very good. They're very good underage.
Yeah,
they still got good players coming through.
But the main thing of all this is, regardless of the financial backing they might be getting, or the setup they have, or the manager and the coach, is they have the best group of players in the history of Limerick. Like, yeah. And you know, we can be here and we can say that guy's a brilliant manager and he's a coach, but at the end of the day, he just when he sends them out past the white line, especially in our finals, you cannot do anything for them because they can't hear you. Right, you get them in at half time to regroup them. But they're unreal. And also what I like about them is they are doing things their own way. They're not following what went before. I think the case in point of that is, you know, last night, you know, you're there watching the man at the All-Ireland final at the banquet, in inverted commas, and you know he's wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, like, and they're just comfortable doing things their own way, and I really admire it with them. And you know, and some people saying they should have been up there and they should have stayed up there, and I'd actually think they're dead right to come home. And like, what a feeling it is waking up there this morning in the woodlands in a day, all their family and friends around them, and you know they'll have a great week, so they will. And I just really like the way they go about things their own way. They put their own stamp on things. They'll go off and they'll enjoy the week, and you know what, in a couple of weeks' time they'll all hop off each other in the club championship. But I just think it is a perfect storm for Limerick there now with everything that they have, lads.
Yeah, like there is an awful lot to admire, Brendan. Shane is right. I do think And Rory, that's well put even as well about just, you know, I suppose their accessibility and what they've done for hurling, particularly in Limerick, where there's so much other stuff going on. Like there's a soccer outfit there that are very well supported. There's obviously Munster Rugby, which is a giant beast, you know. They're in a UL campus where there's so much support going on. And yet hurling is what the kids of Limerick want to play. And largely that's down to this team, Brendan.
It is. Look, there's no doubt about it. They're the flag bearers for future generations of Limerick hurling. I see them playing against them in underage and all that. Like they're infused with a belief and the style of play that they have is nearly down through all the different age groups as well, I suppose. But the sense of that togetherness, I think they brought it up an extra notch this year. I see around the stadium the logo they have in the back of the jersey is now pinned to the top of the stand. After the game, I think against Cork, when they thought they might be gone that day, I think they had a DJ or they had pizzas and they had a keg or something in the dressing room organised for after the game. That became a thing then for all the matches after the Munster final. I think they were all sitting out in a kind of a horseshoe shape together. And certainly they're a group that's very comfortable with each other. And as Shane will know, like any time when you lose, everyone goes to the four corners of the world. Why? Because they can't be looking at each other, because everyone knows, well, I didn't do enough and I didn't do enough to help you. But when you're winning, you have momentum. Everybody has no problem looking at the other fella in the eye and going, you know what, I'm doing everything I can to help you. So there's a comfort in that. And when the real pressure comes on, like yesterday, when Paddy Deegan got that goal, that comfort manifests itself in, you know what, I have something special here and I am not letting it go. And I'm going to use the ball and I'm going to mind the ball because I trust the fella I'm giving it to. And that's exactly the way they play. And it's been infused down through all the other age groups that they have. And it's something that every other county now has to go and find. And if that means you start training in October or in September to get ready for next year, well, then that's what you have to do, because you have to get to that level of trust before you can start trying to beat them in a game of hurling. And that's what all inter-county managers now, that's the challenge they have in front of them to try to break them.
And Jacqui, one of the things that it will also do, like this is a dynasty that they're after creating. So you're in an era now where this will resonate for 100 years, you know? So what you're now looking at is a culture within Limerick hurling where they now have aspirations insofar as any young Limerick hurler coming up is going to say, we're winners, like. We're, you know, that 45-year period where they went without winning an All-Ireland, that's totally consigned to you know, almost irrelevance at this stage. So any young Limerick hurler now coming through will have an extra pep in his step, that extra little bit of belief, make them extra harder to beat, and it's a scary prospect for all of us.
Yeah, God, it really is. The other scary prospect for all of us, Shane, as we wind up, is that hurling's finished for the year. You know, it does still seem to me middle of July, a horrible day yesterday, weather-wise and all that, but it's done. You know, just like that, in the blink of an eye, 34 matches, the whole thing's over, you know.
Jacqui, like the
I'm talking about the inter-county scene now before you go on.
The North Junior A Hurling Championship's going well there at the moment. Ballynahinch are going fine in it. So, look, it is inter-county-wise, and I suppose for maybe the more casual fan, Jacqui, I suppose the hurling is done until it maybe gets going in the end of January.
But you know my point, though,
I know, I do.
It's the marquee games on the TV.
Yeah.
It's the thing that the kids are watching. Like, it is a disappointment that, like, at this stage of the year, when you're in the throes of it, like just after being given such a magnificent final yesterday, suddenly you're like, the whole season, football next week, and then Camogie ladies football, you're like, right, okay, bye, sayonara.
I was actually leaving Croke Park yesterday, just saying good luck to Days and Marie or whatever, like, and the Days goes, I'll talk to you there next week or two. I said, no, that's it now. Yeah. And you know, I suppose that I get where you're coming from. Look, the club thing is brilliant, and if you're involved with the club, it is great, but it won't get the same coverage. It's not the same buzz maybe for the kiddies. Like, let's be honest, you know, they want to see their inter-county stars, and if they go to a club game, the first guy they'll run into on the pitch will be the county star, and that is totally natural, and it's lovely to see. Maybe that'll be lovely for the Limerick fans as well, that you know, they could physically go see Kildimo play, and they could go out and they could touch Kyle Hayes, like, or they could get his autograph, and that'll be a nice thing for them. But yeah, it is. Look, Jacqui, I as someone who's still playing club, and lads, Cummins is still going strong in the club. He actually bet us on his own last year in the relegation semi-final, so he did. So I think he's going to hold out for another year or two to play with the young lad, if I'm right.
What position are you playing, Brent?
He's the top scorer from goals, sir. It's a different thing to be looking at, like, you know. So, what I tried to say is, I think as someone who's still playing club, this thing needs to go back a few weeks, lads. I just think it's too soon. In a few weeks, it'll still all get done. That's my opinion. Look at Limerick Kilkenny last year, the All-Ireland final. They were going on the longest. They were still getting their county finals done. I mean, even ourselves when we were playing, and you'll still be going strong in September. The county finals will still get played. They will still get played. So I think it needs to go back a few weeks, Jacqui. I think it's too condensed. I believe there's a change next year with there won't be any prelim quarter final if I'm correct in saying that, as regards the winners of the Joe Mac or the runners up playing. So that might be an extra week as well. An extra week's rest is what I'm trying to say from the provincial thing. So, but I do think it needs to go back 2-3 weeks, and I don't think it will make any difference long term. We'll still get our county championships done, and we'll still get them done in loads of time. But I do think this thing needs to get pushed out a little bit. We have to stop condensing it. I'm not a fan of the first round being on in April. I think it needs to get pushed back till the summertime. But that's my feeling on it anyway.
Yeah, totally agreed. Last thoughts then, Brendan, on the season as we wrap it up. You know, just like, I guess a lot of it belongs to Limerick, but we have had some other special moments in this championship. You talk about Clare, lots of other teams that are just rightly getting there. 2023 has been really memorable, hasn't it?
Look, it has, and I suppose you go back to Cork. Really, had been the hard luck story of the championship.
I'm so glad you brought them up on your own without any prompting.
Remiss of me to not mention them from the Tipperary camp, to say the Cork are in hard luck. But yeah, they have been. I mean, Pat Ryan has done a huge job with them. Now, the next question is, can they get the successful under 20s of the last number of years, feed them into the group, get a style of play that suits them, and have to be robust enough to get through the Munster Championship? I've no doubt that if Cork were obviously in the Leinster Championship, they'd be saying to themselves, we'd be in the top three, and we'd be getting on into the end of May, into June, and the knockout stages. We'd prepare for that, but that's not their reality. So it was a fantastic championship. But one thing though that I've noticed this year, whether it's on the Sunday game or in podcasts, I think as hurling people, we're starting to get a bit of a smell of the fact that we're under pressure, that the game isn't being promoted enough. It stems, I think, first of all, from not being a director of hurling coming from Croke Park. I think it's just been terrible stuff that nobody has taken up the great work that Martin Fogarty had done. I think that's crazy stuff. Like, I think Jared Burns coming in as new Uachtaráin has said that he's going to look at that role and get it back up in action. Because while we look at our top tier teams, there's also Sligos, Mayos, Leitrim's, all these teams in hurling that the Tanog and all was being looked after. And that's being condensed, Jacqui, as well, at underage structure. Like, those weekends were supposed to be 2 weekends. I think they're down to 1 weekend now, runoff and blitzes, all this kind of stuff. So we need to look at the grassroots in 2024 in hurling and make sure that that's looked after. Because Croke Park yesterday with 83,000 in it, Limerick, Tipperary, Cork, all these teams, even Wexford had a poor year, but they'll come back roaring next year. I've no doubt for that. All fine. But I just get the sense in our bones of analysts or pundits or passionate hurling people, call us what you like, that we feel that there's a slippage in the way the game is being promoted. And I think that has to be addressed, because I'm fed up of talking about in these podcasts and people saying, oh, you hate football. I don't. I love football. I played it myself with tape, all that kind of stuff. But we have to fight our own corner. And that's because we feel it's under a little bit of threat. And my hope that the club championship do really well, and that the message will be taken on board on the mothership in Croke Park and start to invest more in the grassroots and getting the game expanded across more counties.
Here. Yeah. Couldn't agree more, Brendan.
Absolutely. Like, I think Brendan is 100% spot on, Jacqui. Like, that to me is such an important message to get out there. There is in my view, there's a complacency around the game. And once you get complacent for instance, some of the games that went on GAA Go, like Limerick's only defeat in the last number of years wasn't seen live. Like, that was one of the epic contests. These are big decisions. Why hurling has to be so married and handcuffed to football is another question I would ask. Does it need to be played off at exactly the same time, where the two sports are constant loggerheads and competing for airtime? Can hurling be shifted later and open up a window for club players then? I know there are dual club issues as well, but all of these things need to be discussed, because there is a complacency, in my view, around the game. And Brendan is 100% correct in that it's all fine and rosy when you're looking at the car on the outside. It's when you lift the bonnet up and you have a look, maybe when you further down the food chain, and you're going, well, you know, how healthy is the game really? And they're big questions and big concerns that I would have as an ordinary member and as somebody that's working at the coalface to try and promote the game in a non-traditional hurling area. Because I can see the challenges that this poses. So to have somebody in there fighting the corner of hurling, whether it's a Fogarty type figure or a direct replacement or a redefinition of the role, but somebody that's in there with a sort of a missionary zeal to make sure that the game is looked after. That's a huge thing. I couldn't endorse what Brendan said anymore.
Yep, me too. And look, they'll have a long time to do that over the course of the winter throughout the club championship before the intercounty season kicks in again in 2024. Lads, we'll leave it there after a thoroughly enjoyable season. Limerick, 4 in a row champions. And look, we'll look forward to Tip stopping them for the 5 in a row next year. Shane McGrath, Brendan Cummins, thanks a million for being with us.
How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over.